So here we are in a field of garlic mustard. This is an invasive species that grows all over. I bet every single one of you can find this. It has these spiky heart-shaped leaves, little white 4-petal flowers, and if you break a leaf off and kind of crush it up, there's a very mild garlicky smell. I don't know if you can taste it. Mostly I taste like a bitter green taste and maybe a little bit of garlic aftertaste. People make pesto with this. You can cook it as a green. Not one of my favorites, but certainly a great entry-level edible, wild edible. So I was gonna try to find you some wintergreen berries, but all I can find are wintergreens. This is my best David Attenborough. I'm gonna try to show you a wintergreen and to pluck it. So wintergreen is a plant that stays green in winter, and it's got kind of shiny, leathery leaves. And it's just one little tiny plant, right? It'll just kind of have like one little stem and a few different leaves. And then sometimes you'll see little red berries underneath. And if I find some of those, I will find them for you. Wintergreen is a delicious edible. You might have heard of the flavor tea berry, right? Same flavor. And Pepto-Bismol also, so not everybody loves this flavor. So you can use the leaves to make a tea. You can actually take a little bite. If you're not sure if it's wintergreen or not, if you crush a leaf and you smell that wintergreen smell, there's nothing else it could be, right? So you can actually take a little bite. It's pretty leathery, but you can definitely get that wintergreen flavor. Better to take this and make a tea out of it and eat the berries when they're fresh. The birds have beaten me to these. So what we have here are some fiddlehead ferns, and notice that when the ferns first come up, they're all scrolled like this, and then eventually it'll start leafing out. I'll talk about identifying characteristics in just a second, but you want to get them when they're at this stage. So firmly curled. The thing that allows me to identify this as a ostrich fern are the fact that it has this deep groove here in the stem. See how it's got a U-shaped stem with a deep groove in it? That's number one. And the second thing is this papery coating, which you see here. So here's the brown papery covering I was talking about that covers the stem in the very beginning. And the other thing to remember is that, so each of these becomes a fern, and if you take too many ferns from one crown, the root won't be able to sustain itself. They've done research on this, and you can take a couple of fronds per crown, and that's and then they send up a few more, and it doesn't change the number of ferns that you're going to see later in the year. That's how to sustainably harvest these. I'm here in Ramplandia, our secret name for our secret ramp spot, to dig ramps. It's great to find a place like this where basically there's ramps as far as the eye can see. There's a dog too. Let me find the dog. Oh, she's hiding. And so I know that if I dig some ramps here, I'm not hurting the local supply. So I'm digging some ramps here. There's a beautiful little red trillium there, but these are the ramps, and I'm looking for a place to dig them that has broad leaves that look like a pretty mature plant. And I'm going to, the sustainable way to dig these is really just to cut the leaves off. The problem with that is the best part of the ramp is underground. And I can dig these guilt-free because there are so many ramps here that if that I'm really thinning them out. So this is what they look like. They're in the onion family, and they have this nice little root. All right, and that is the best part of the ramp right there. If you're going to harvest these sustainably, you kind of leave the thickest part of the base and just kind of cut it off here, and you get some of the stem and the leaves. So I'm down here with the trout lilies, and these are not edible, but they're a sign of spring. Let's see if I can get them in focus here a little bit. So this is a trout lily, and notice that you've got kind of a nodding head. If you turn it over, it has a little tiny lily-like flower, all right? And the reason it's called a trout lily is because notice that the leaves are speckled, like a speckled trout. Another name is dogtooth violet. It is not a violet. It's much more closely related to the lily family than the violet family. The reason I bring this up is not because this is edible. It's not. It's because when the trout lilies bloom, it means it's time to look for morels. Trout lilies are a signal that the beginning of the mushroom foraging season has begun. And the most prized mushroom that you can find in the spring is the morel. And what you see in these pictures here is black morel and a golden morel and then a false morel. The false morel is all the way to the right, and notice how its appearance has more of a brain-like look than the pitted look of the true morel. As we move on to the next slide, you can see that if you cut the morel in half, a true morel has an empty center and an attached kind of pitted section, whereas this other kind of false morel has a more draped look. That's another way of identifying these. The mica caps, Caprinus micaceus, are coming up right on schedule. They're super tiny right now, but in a couple of days they'll be the size of my thumb, at which point I can harvest them, and a day after that there'll be a pile of black goo. These are a delicious little mushroom, but you need to rule out its older cousin, which contains an enzyme that destroys your ability to detoxify alcohol. It's basically antabuse. And so if you eat the closely related alcohol inky, anytime close to drinking alcohol, you will become terribly ill. But this little one doesn't have that problem. And this is nightshade. And here comes brimstone. Yeah, so it's really a family affair.